In this presentation, we will discuss the reconceptualization of culture in the context of positive behavior supports. The information in this presentation is based on the work of Shugai, Fallon, and O'Keefe from 2012. In this presentation, we will discuss culture as a product of context, describe the relationship between culture and behavior, and present a method for examining behavior and culturally responsive practices. In education, we hear about culturally relevant and responsive practices all the time. Culture is central in discussions related to diversity, disproportionality, inequity and disparity, academic achievement, and disability. Yet within each of these topic areas, we, as an education community, continue to struggle in the area of culture. We struggle with our understanding of culture, effective communications between cultures, and expressions of unique experiences, as well as developing actions that realize meaningful benefits for all students. So what is culture? Culture is a group of individuals who share similar overt and/or verbal behavior. People within a culture share a learning history, and they may have traits that differentiate one group from another. In education, we try to define culture so that we can predict future actions and needs. A traditional approach to culturally relevant practices would have us examining traits of each culture and making generalizations about the impact of culture on students' outcomes. Yet behaviorists have a different view of culture. Hayes and Tormino state that no degree of knowledge about the characteristics of groups or cultures can substitute for the analysis of the actions of a given individual in their historical and situational context, because no two members of any group are socialized in the same way. Additionally, Skinner states that a culture evolves when practices contribute to the success of the practicing group in solving its problems. If we examine culture in this context, practices that help develop skills that lead toward success for all students will be culturally responsive. The best way to effectively impact the outcomes for students from diverse cultural backgrounds is to look at student outcomes and then examine group trends that are related to culture. We must look for patterns occurring across as well as within cultural groups to ensure we are implementing culturally responsive practices. Then we must use the data to make instructional decisions. This may involve making changes or modifications for individuals or small groups of students. As previously stated, throughout this course we are going to examine the pyramid model of behavior support. This model is based on positive behavior intervention support, or PBIS. The pyramid model is culturally responsive because it examines students within a classroom or a school context. Once examined, the levels of support provided for each student are based on data collected and developed with the individual strengths and needs of the student in mind. Another way to think of culturally responsive behavior supports is to examine the interrelationships between collecting and using data, designing culturally responsive practices, and working within the system that is present, which for teachers is their school and classroom environment. The culturally responsive part occurs when these factors are used while considering the student's culture and context, or taking into consideration their previous experiences. There are many ways to assess culturally responsive practices. In terms of PBIS, we can examine factors of the context, which in this case is our classroom, and ask ourselves if we have clear expectations, if we provide clear descriptions and definitions of behaviors, if we teach effective routines and procedures, and use data to make decisions. These questions are all asked in terms of culturally valid data, equitable outcomes for all students, assessing our own knowledge of culture, and implementing culturally relevant practices. The more times we are able to cross-reference these questions and answer yes, the more responsive our classroom is to the needs of our students. As we progress through this course, we will continue to use the pyramid as a basis for developing classroom environments and relationships with families that are culturally responsive and support students' growth and development. Keep in mind that culture must be reconceptualized to be examined in context by using the information presented here.